Steve Williams didn't hold back when he revealed the four wrestlers he absolutely hated the most. And believe me, you are not ready for this list. These names might surprise you, but they show just how real things could get behind the scenes. So let's not waste any more time. Let's dive right in and see who made the list. 1. Immobile Windham. Williams and Windham's rivalry wasn't one of those cartoon-style feuds built on flashy promos. It was real, gritty, and sometimes a little too close to the edge. Both men came from the old-school mentality where toughness wasn't just for show. It was something you had to prove. And when you put two alpha personalities like that in the ring, things were bound to explode sooner or later. In the NWA and WCW, they crossed paths multiple times, and every time they did, the matches had that extra spark. You could feel the tension just by watching. Williams would hit hard, almost daring Windham to hit back harder. Windham, never one to back down, gave it right back. The crowd loved it, but behind the scenes, things weren't always as smooth. Steve Williams reportedly had little patience for anyone who didn't match his intensity. He respected toughness, and if he thought you were soft or just showboating, he'd make sure you felt his punches for real. Barry Windham, though, wasn't one to be intimidated. He grew up in wrestling royalty, the son of Blackjack Mulligan, and carried that same fearless attitude. So when Williams tried to push him around in the ring, Windham didn't hesitate to push back. What started as a professional rivalry slowly turned into something more personal. There were stories from Japan, especially during their time in AJPW, that their matches got so stiff they were practically shoot fights. Neither man wanted to be the one who blinked first. Japan was a different world entirely. The fans there respected physical wrestling, and AJPW was famous for its King's Road style, where every move looked and felt real. Williams thrived in that environment, but Windham, who was used to the American style, had to adjust, and that didn't sit well with Williams. He saw it as a sign of weakness, which only deepened his dislike. The more they wrestled, the more that quiet tension built up. Fans, those matches were unforgettable. Two hard-hitting legends leaving everything in the ring. But behind the curtain, the respect between them never fully formed. Williams reportedly found Windham arrogant and too relaxed, while Windham thought Williams took things too seriously and crossed the line between working and hurting. 2. Eddie Gilbert. Eddie Gilbert was the complete opposite of Steve Williams in almost every way. Gilbert wasn't the biggest guy in the locker room, but he had the brains and charisma to make up for it. Known as Hot Stuff, Eddie had a sharp wrestling mind, a loud personality, and the confidence of someone who believed he could outthink anyone. Williams, on the other hand, was pure muscle and intensity, a powerhouse who relied on brute strength and toughness. He didn't care much for flash or talk. He believed respect was earned through pain, not promos. Their feud in Mid-South Wrestling became one of those rivalries that fans could feel was real. Williams and Gilbert just didn't mix. It wasn't just a clash of styles, it was a clash of philosophies. Gilbert liked to play the clever heel, using tricks, distractions, and mind games to get under people's skin. That kind of wrestling drove Williams crazy. He saw Gilbert's antics as disrespectful to the sport, and that tension showed in their matches. When they faced off, the energy was different. Williams brought his trademark physicality, throwing suplexes and slams that looked downright brutal. Gilbert, always thinking 2 steps ahead, would sell those hits but always sneak in a cheap shot or distraction to even the odds. He often had the nightmare by his side, which made things even more personal. For Williams, it wasn't just about beating Gilbert in the ring anymore. It was about proving a point. Backstage, things weren't much better. Williams reportedly found Gilbert arrogant and thought he talked too much for someone who hadn't proven himself yet. Gilbert, on the other hand, thought Williams was too serious and didn't understand the entertainment side of wrestling. That kind of tension doesn't just disappear, and every time they worked together, it added another layer of real emotion to their feud. Techno rivalry helped shape both men early in their careers. For Williams, it was a chance to develop his identity as the no-nonsense powerhouse who didn't care about playing games. For Gilbert, it was an opportunity to refine his heel persona and prove he could hang with one of the toughest men in the business. But even years later, Williams never had much good to say about Eddie Gilbert. He respected his wrestling mind, sure, but he didn't like him as a person. He saw Gilbert as manipulative and too focused on politics, something Williams had no patience for. In a way, their feud in Mid-South was a perfect reflection of who they were as people. Gilbert wanted control and attention, while Williams wanted respect and order. When those two worlds collided, it made for great television. But behind the curtain, it created a grudge that Steve Williams carried for years. 3. Lex Luger. Lex Luger was the company's golden boy at the time. He had the look promoters loved, tall, chiseled, and marketable. He wasn't just a wrestler. He was a star they could put on posters and sell to mainstream audiences. Steve Williams, on the other hand, was old school to the bone. He didn't care about photo ops or flexing for cameras. His focus was on the fight, on the in-ring grind, the bruises, and the hard hits that came with it. So when Williams was put in a feud with Luger for the United States Championship, it wasn't just about gold. It became about proving who was the real tough guy in wrestling. Their matches were brutal. Williams was known for his hard-hitting, football-style aggression, while Luger relied more on power moves and showmanship. From the very start, Williams didn't buy into the hype around Luger. He thought Lex had it easy, getting opportunities because of his look rather than his heart for the business. That rubbed Williams the wrong way, especially since he'd spent years working his way up through Japan and the territories, earning every bit of respect he got through sweat and pain. In the ring, you could feel that tension. Williams didn't hold back, and it was clear he wanted to test Luger's toughness. Every clothesline, every slam, it all had a little extra force behind it. Luger, for his part, didn't always appreciate that. He was used to opponents working safe and protecting his image, not someone trying to knock him off his pedestal. What the fans saw as a heated, competitive rivalry was, in many ways, a test of pride and ego. Behind the scenes, their relationship wasn't much better. Williams thought Luger was arrogant and entitled, too focused on his physique and fame. He felt Luger lacked the grit that defined real wrestlers. Luger, on the other hand, saw Williams as a stiff, overly serious veteran who didn't understand how wrestling had evolved into an entertainment business. It was a clash of generations and mindsets, old-school toughness versus new-age presentation. Their feud for the U.S. title may not have lasted forever, but it left an impression. Fans saw two legitimate powerhouses giving everything they had, and while Luger often got the upper hand thanks to his push from management, Williams made sure every encounter looked and felt real. In the end, the animosity between them wasn't just about wins and losses. It was personal. Williams couldn't stand the idea of someone like Luger being praised as the total package when, in his eyes, Luger hadn't earned that reputation the hard way. That bitterness stuck with him for years, and when talking about wrestlers he truly couldn't stand, Lex Luger's name was one that always came up. 4. Lineback, Kenta Kobashi. Kenta Kobashi was one of the brightest stars in AJPW. He was known for his unbelievable stamina, explosive offense, and never-say-die attitude. He wasn't the biggest guy, but he had a heart that refused to quit. Williams, on the other hand, was a powerhouse, a true American monster who had built his reputation in Japan by being rough, intense, and unrelenting. When the two collided, fans knew they were in for something special. Their matches were some of the hardest-hitting bouts in wrestling history. There was no holding back, no soft shots, no wasted motion. Every chop, suplex, and clothesline looked and sounded painfully real. The crowd would be on their feet for the entire match, living and breathing every move. Japan's fans respected that kind of physical storytelling, and both Williams and Kobashi gave them exactly what they wanted. But underneath all the mutual respect was a quiet tension. Williams had worked his way up in AJPW alongside legends like Stan Hansen and Terry Gordy, and he was used to being seen as one of the dominant foreigners, the gaijin powerhouses who helped define that era. When Kobashi began to rise as one of Japan's top homegrown stars, it created a bit of a rivalry for status. Williams didn't like giving ground, especially to someone younger, and Kobashi was determined to prove that Japanese wrestlers could stand toe-to-toe with anyone in the world. In many ways, Kobashi became the measuring stick for Williams. Every time they faced off, Williams wanted to break him, physically and mentally. He threw some of the nastiest powerbombs and suplexes of his career against Kobashi, almost daring him to get back up. But Kobashi always did. That was part of what made their chemistry so incredible. Kobashi's resilience pushed Williams to go even harder, and the cycle continued. Some of their encounters, like their famous main events in the mid-90s, are still talked about today. They didn't need gimmicks or wild storylines, just pure intensity and raw emotion. It was wrestling in its purest form, two men testing the limits of body and spirit. Even though Williams reportedly respected Kobashi deeply, he also admitted that their matches took a real toll on him. They weren't easy. Every bout left bruises and soreness that lasted for weeks. And while Williams didn't hate Kobashi in the traditional sense, he did see him as one of his toughest rivals, a man who forced him to dig deeper every single time. For fans, the Williams versus Kobashi rivalry became legendary. For Williams, it was personal pride. He didn't want to be outshined, and he certainly didn't want to be out-toughed. So every time they met, he treated it like a fight for respect. And in the end, that's exactly what those matches represented. Mutual respect, born out of pain, endurance, and the pure love of wrestling at its most brutal. And that wraps up today's video. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe so you never miss any of our future updates.